And we're also joined by Daniel Halper, online editor for the Weekly Standard, also author of the book Clinton, Inc., The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. And boy, we're seeing all the ins and outs of that political machine now through the Clinton Foundation and other revelations, aren't we, Daniel Halper?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Susan and Larry. It's great to be here. It's been a wild ride, and it's just the first couple of weeks of the campaign. So obviously there's a lot more in store for us as we progress.
Yeah, and I got to ask, yesterday the former President Bill Clinton said, we didn't do anything wrong. Well, he didn't say we didn't do anything wrong. Of course, in classic Clinton manner, he said, I'm quite sure that we were not aware of doing anything incorrect knowingly. That's what it was. We didn't knowingly do anything. In terms of receiving money to the foundation in exchange for undue influence from the Secretary of State. They're basically saying you can't point to anything that Hillary Clinton did in exchange for a donation to the Clinton Foundation. Is that true, Daniel Halper, or is there actually some positions that that Mrs. Clinton had before she became Secretary of State that then suddenly she had a different position when she was Secretary of State, and you can connect that to a donation?
Well, I read it slightly differently. I read to suggest that there might have been instances where they were changed or where her opinion changed based on different circumstances, but she didn't knowingly do anything inappropriate. She might have unwittingly or unknowingly done something inappropriate.
Well, there's no way to prove that, is there?
But you're not going to be able to prove that, and so it's a very lawyerly thing, and it's a very weird just to have President Bill Clinton out there. Anyway, keep in mind Hillary Clinton hasn't given an interview yet, which is very extraordinary for a presidential candidate to really have gone missing for so long, not giving even a campaign rally or anything. Instead, her husband is out there defending her from Africa, and he's not doing a very good job. And he's sort of, saying, well, look, of course I'll continue my speech making. I got bills to pay.
Yeah.
And just it's strange and not helpful, and it's sort of a reminder of how bad Bill Clinton was for Hillary Clinton last go-around, because he can be an enormous asset. He's a very talented politician, but he's also completely reckless and a huge liability.
So, Daniel, yesterday, David Kendall, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, told the House Select Committee on Benghazi that they didn't agree with the demand that she appear twice before the committee and that she would appear only once. What do you make of that? And how do you think she's going to fare when she does finally appear? And do you think that's going to hurt her, or does this give her a chance to kind of defend herself and come out looking a little better?
Well, I think it hurts her in the way that Chris Christie, when he's has a lot of scandal around him and aides are getting indicted, that hurts him whether or not he's touched. And I think going to an investigation on the Hill, and that being basically your first big campaign rally, a hearing on Capitol Hill for mistakes that were made while you were Secretary of State, I don't think that helps her one bit. Obviously, her most loyal defenders will find some way to excuse that. But, whether it hurts her dramatically depends on, I think, the question and answer, right? So if the Republicans come prepared and are able to ask probing and interesting and relevant questions, then I think they could hurt her. But Capitol Hill hearings have oftentimes been letdowns, as we well know, and so I wouldn't really count on it being absolutely devastating, but it definitely is not helpful.
Daniel Halper's, I guess, he's online editor for Weekly Standard, and of course his book Clinton, Inc. sort of paved the way for the scrutiny of the Clinton Foundation. I got to ask you, a lot of the defenders of Hillary and Bill, they jump out there and they say, all these questions being asked and all the money that's being raised by foreign governments, and you think that that's a bad thing, but all the great things that the foundation does, all of the amazing work that we do, it's worth this scrutiny because ultimately the money that these countries like Saudi Arabia and other nations are giving, it's going to such good work. Can you tell us really what the foundation does and whether those dollars really do go to people in need and whether it's really doing great work?
So that's a great question, right? Because even the Clintons' harshest critics say, well, let us first stipulate, of course, that of course they do good work. Nobody can really point to what that good work is. I mean, we can break it down in several different layers. So about 10% to 15% of that money that goes into the foundation goes immediately out in various grants.
That's a small amount.
Really charitable grants.
Wait, what was that percentage
again?
It's a
small amount, but
can you
about 10%.
10% of the money actually goes out to grants. Wow.
Right, but their argument is, look, we run our charity differently. Most charitable foundations, most of the money goes out, but we actually run various programs in-house. So that's not a good way of calculating how much money we spend on charity. So they have various AIDS programs and various drugs programs and various college programs to get colleges excited, college students interested. And the problem is that it is very hard to point to actual accomplishments. They say, we've helped lower the cost of AIDS drugs. Well, the cost of AIDS drugs were coming down anyway. So what role exactly they played in lowering it, we don't really know, except perhaps, around the margins. So a lot of these things, it's not really easy it's not tangible. They can't point to actual successes. But people like to be nice, and charity's a good thing, and so we don't really want to go after it. And that's, I think, the general attitude.
Just a quick stat before Susan asks her next question. I'm just looking now. In 2013, the Clinton Foundation brought in $140 million in grants and pledges. $9 million was spent on direct aid. That's amazing. Go ahead, Susan.
Right. And it's interesting what you said about it being in-house, some of it being in-house. So you're saying still more of that money is being spent than that 9 or 10%.
Well, that's what they're saying.
Okay.
I'm just telling you what their arguments are. But I'll tell you that money that's going out in grants, if you actually look at the grant money, which I've done, a lot of that money is not going to charitable grants. A lot of that money is going to legacy grants. So it goes to various archival projects. I think over $40 million has gone to the National Archives, and various, another $6 or $8 million has gone to the Miller Center at the University of Virginia, which helps complete histories of presidencies. So various projects like that, which we don't really consider charitable.
Right.
But when the Today Show shows up to interview Bill Clinton, they're walking through the slums of Ethiopia or Haiti to sort of give them all these images as if that's what they're doing on a daily basis, feeding these poor people of the world.
Right. It seems like they're able to put out this image that's not necessarily backed up by hard numbers, right? Isn't that really what it's about?
Basically, look, there's a lot of organizations like this, right? As long as they're under the guise of nobility, they get a pass. And the Clintons, for a decade and a half, have been getting that pass because people assume that because they're saying that they're doing good work, that they're doing that good work, but we don't actually know that much about these programs. And so I don't think it's an added bonus for Hillary Clinton and for Bill Clinton at all, even though it's definitely helped refurbish President Clinton's once tarnished reputation.
Daniel Halper, I'm almost out of time. Really fast, your cover story, I think it's the cover story in the Weekly Standard, has to do with the question of whether Hillary Clinton will even get the Democratic nomination. What's your thesis there?
Well, my thesis is that she's a weird amalgam of all the worst traits of recent presidential campaigns, without many of the recent winning attributes. So she has John Kerry's flip-flopping, Barack Obama's arrogance, Mitt Romney's wealth, Joe Biden's gaffing ability, and Al Gore's personality mixed in. Richard
Al Gore's
Nixon's
personality,
paranoia and tactics, and that's a hard sell. That she has problems to overcome despite the strength of her political mission.
We got to leave it there. Thank you, Daniel Halper, for joining us. Good stuff.